everyone, my name is Kylie and this is Miss Kyle Reads, and today I am bringing you an updated video of my favorite fantasy books / series. Now I already have a favorite fantasy books video which I will leave linked down below, so I'm not going to talk about any of the books that I talked about in that video. So I will leave that linked down below, so go watch that if you want to see a whole lot of awkwardness plus the books that I already loved that will not be in this video. Let's start this video off by saying I have not read every single fantasy book that has ever been written. Second, let's say that my preferences do not have to match your preferences. People were telling me that in my last video, since I did not have a certain book, that I was stupid. Let's be real, I'm not telling you that your opinion is stupid. So let's all be nice to each other and not tell me that I'm stupid and my preferences are stupid, because it's called an opinion and everybody has one. So before you leave a comment such as those I've just mentioned, think about it first and think, would I enjoy someone saying this to me? Because if the answer is no, then don't leave that comment. If you feel like I'm being rude, sorry, you can leave this video right now. Alright, on to the fantasy books. So I've kind of divided it up by age group, so I'm going to start with the middle grade / younger series. And first on that list is Fablehaven by Brandon Mull. This is a 5-book children's fantasy series, and I have only read the first book, so the fact that it is on this list is pretty awesome because this book was fantastic. So this book follows 2 siblings, Seth and Kendra, as they go live with their grandparents who actually take care of this magical menagerie of creatures. So it's pretty cool because they get to go exploring and discover these creatures, and it's just really awesome. This book is so fantastically written, it's insane that it's only for children. So Fablehaven by Brandon Mull. Next is the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. It is crazy to think that I made that first video before I had even read Percy Jackson, because I feel like I read these such a long time ago. But the first book is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and this series follows a boy named Percy Jackson who finds out he's actually the son of a Greek god, so he is a Greek hero, and he has to go on a bunch of crazy adventures with his friends at Camp Half-Blood, and these are just a whole bundle of fun. Like seriously, if you have ever thought about reading these, read them. They're so quick and easy, and then you can read all of the rest of Rick Riordan's books. Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Next is a children's series by one of my favorite authors, Brandon Sanderson, and that is Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarian series. Now, I have only read the first 2 books of this 5-book series, and they were fantastic. They follow this boy named Alcatraz Smedry as he finds out that he is from a family of Smedrys who have this magical ability. And this magic, basically you put on a pair of glasses and you can see different footprints and whatnot. And the magic means that Alcatraz has a talent. And Alcatraz's talent is that he can break things. And his grandpa's talent is that he is always late to things. So those talents seem kind of quirky, and they are, but they actually save their lives at points. Brandon Sanderson is such a good writer because he puts so many humorous little things in these books that kids would think are humorous, but that adults would actually find another meaning for, and they are also humorous. So it's just awesome. Seriously, though, if you just want to read some funny and fun books, then read Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians. Moving up in age category to young adult. The only one in this category will be The Magician's Guild by Trudy Canavan, and I have a whole video on my review for this trilogy down below. The first book is The Magician's Guild, and it follows a girl who is kind of a street urchin, and she is discovered to have magical powers in this world where only the noble have magical powers, so she kind of has to run away from the magicians that are chasing her. And yeah, that's basically all I can say without spoiling things. But this girl named Sonia is such a fierce and complex character, and her circumstances just lead her to these discoveries, and the whole series just revolves around these discoveries, and it's really great. The writing is also really great, and the world building is just enough that I feel like I can be immersed in this world without having too much description about the world. The books in the series are The Magician's Guild, The Novice, and The Dark Lord by Trudy Canavan. Moving up into adult fantasy now, and we're just gonna get these big ones out of the way. A Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin, and The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I hate those people that say that you're not a fantasy reader if you have not read these books. There are no specific guidelines saying whether or not you're a fantasy reader. If you read a fantasy book, you're a fantasy reader. I don't care if you haven't read a certain book. Anyways, I feel like there's a lot of ranting going on in this video, so we're just gonna get on with it. A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin is 5 humongous epic fantasy books that follow a huge array of characters in this world with very little magic, but so much politics. These are just so complex and hard to talk about without giving anything away and without actually talking about specific things that would give things away. But the foreshadowing and the nuances of all of these different historical elements and the history that are in these books, wow, George R. R. Martin, like, seriously, you're a genius. I will say these books are pretty dense and do take a long time to get through, and some of the scenes are very graphic, and if you can't handle that, and if you're a younger reader, I don't suggest these. It does take a certain type of person to read these books, but if you do, and you enjoy all of the history and politics and scheming that goes on in these, and you also like a huge cast of characters that aren't really the best characters, they don't have the best morals, then you will like A Game of Thrones. Or A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. And then The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, which is one of the most well-known fantasy trilogies of all time, I think. The Lord of the Rings has The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, and then this box set includes The Hobbit. The Lord of the Rings trilogy follows this hobbit named Frodo, and Frodo has to go on this quest with a group of characters to destroy the Ring of Mordor. If you haven't ever heard of The Lord of the Rings, have you been living under a rock? I don't know. These are also kind of hard to get through because they were written a long time ago. So if you can't get into that writing style, then I don't know if you will enjoy these. But if you can and you love classical fantasy, then I say read these if you have not. Next is another Brandon Sanderson, and that would be Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This book is a standalone as of now. It is supposed to have a sequel coming soon, but this book follows 2 sisters who are very different, have very different personalities, as one of them is supposed to be married off to the God King, and one of them is basically a nobody who nobody really cares about, and their roles get switched and crazy things happen from there. What I love about Brandon Sanderson is his magic and the different types of magic systems that he is able to create in these worlds is just crazy. The magic in this world has to do with everybody having a breath. And you can give your breath to another person, and that person will have that breath, but once they give their breaths away, then they are done. What they can do with the breaths is breathe it into an inanimate object and give it commands to do its will, and that's just really awesome, and it makes a whole lot more sense when you read the book. Brandon Sanderson is fantastic. I had like 3 of his series in the last video. Read Brandon Sanderson and everything he's ever written, okay? Next is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. My goodness, I can't believe Patrick Rothfuss was not in that last video either, but I had not read The Name of the Wind at that point in time in my life, and boy am I glad that I have now. The Name of the Wind follows a character named Kvothe, and Kvothe is a legend in this world, and he is now living in an inn as a nobody, and this chronicler comes along one day, and Kvothe decides to tell his story from his own mouth. So this book follows his life story from his childhood years to his early teen years, and the next book is his early teen years to his like early 20 years, and the last book is not yet published, and that makes me sad. But this first book is The Name of the Wind, the second book is The Wise Man's Fear, and the third book will be Doors of Stone, and boy do I need that in my life. This is one of the best fantasy books I've ever read, and it sticks with you. This is such a character-focused story with such beautiful writing that you can go back and analyze this chapter by chapter, and it's just fantastic what he includes in here. My goodness, I will say it once and I will say it again, Patrick Rothfuss is a wizard! Seriously, a fantasy wizard, and I need more of him in my life. And by that I mean Doors of Stone. So, I said I was not going to include a book in here that I've talked about last time, but what would this channel be without a few contradictions? A Gathering of Shadows by V.E. Schwab is the sequel to A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab, which I talked about in that first video. This is the sequel to that book, and I have read it, and I have loved it. This is fantastic. A Darker Shade of Magic follows this man named Kel, and Kel is able to use blood magic to travel between the 4 different Londons that exist in this world. Black London, Grey London, Red London, and White London. And boy, is it good. The characters in this are so great, and the magic just gets so much more developed in this second book, and it's just awesome. And the plots in each book are separate to one another, but then there is an overarching storyline that is just fantastic, and the writing is also fantastic. And I really love it. So yeah, A Darker Shade of Magic and then A Gathering of Shadows are fantastic. Next is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which I have a book review video for, which I will leave linked down below. This is the first book in the Farseer trilogy and the first book in the Elderling Realm series that Robin Hobb writes most of her adult fantasy books in. And boy, is this good. I have only read this first book in this trilogy and in this world, and this has stuck with me so much. This book follows a boy named Fitz as he learns that he is the bastard-born son of the king-in-waiting. You follow the first-person perspective of Fitz, so you really get in his head, and he kind of is annoying, but you also learn so much about him and so much about the world, and it's just such a good setup for what's going to happen. And the magic in here is very intriguing. The wit and the skill. The wit is basically the linking of mind with an animal, and you can basically bounce emotions off of each other, and you can really connect with one animal. And the skill is kind of the same thing with humans, but you can talk mind to mind, or you can coerce someone into doing something that does not have the skill. So Fitz has both of those types of magic, and it just makes for a really great story. I will say that this is slow-paced and very character-focused, like Robin Hobb's books are. So if you don't like that so much, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you do, this is fantastic, and the writing is fantastic. What else can I say is fantastic? Everything! So next is another Robin Hobb book, and that is Shaman's Crossing, the first book in the Soldier's Son trilogy by Robin Hobb. I have read that book, and I am currently reading the second book, Forest Mage, and boy does Robin Hobb do good first person. Like, seriously. This book follows a boy named Navarre. Oh, I also have a review for this book, which I will link down below, but this book follows a boy named Navarre, as he is the second-born son of a nobleman, so he is destined to be a soldier, because in this world your birth order becomes your destiny. So Navarre goes to the King's Academy to learn to become a Kavala soldier, and it's just really interesting because the magic kind of sucks him in, and it basically takes over Navarre's life. This is really interesting. It's so different than anything else I've ever read, and it's just so fascinating. And again, Robin Hobb's writing is so great. You can literally feel like you are there. So good. This Soldier Son trilogy is not a part of the Elderling Realm, so you can read it without reading the rest of Robin Hobb's books, which is also a plus, because there's like 20 of those books in the Elderling Realm that you have to read in order. Again, I don't know if I talked about this one in the other video, but I'm going to talk about it now, the Gentleman Bastards series, which includes The Lies of Locke Lamora, Red Seas Under Red Skies, and The Republic of Thieves. I have talked about this series so much, and I don't think it's that popular on YouTube or in the book community, but it should be because it's fantastic. This series follows a group called the Gentleman Bastards, as they are thieves and they steal from the rich, but they don't give it to the poor. They keep it for themselves, and they just pull off these crazy schemes, and they do these little schemes, and in the end all of it ties together, and you just realize that Scott Lynch is a genius, because he is. And the writing is also great. I just love it so much. If you love the feeling of Pirates of the Caribbean, that's kind of the feeling I get with these books, but in book form. And every book is in a different city in this world, so we get so much world building just from being in different cities in these books. But the first book kind of has a Venice feel, but it's in a fantasy world, so if you like that type of setting, I think you will really enjoy it. Next is The Black Prism by Brent Weeks, which is the first book to the Lightbringer series, and this is my most recent read, and I am currently obsessed obsessing over it. This book follows a man named Gavin Guile, and Gavin Guile is the most powerful person in the world because he is the Prism. And the Prism is able to control all of the type of magic in this world. And the magic basically has to do with the spectrum of light and who can see what light and what they can do with that light. And it's just fantastic. But the downside to using a lot of magic is you die sooner. So that's kind of a bad downside. But yes, this book is just so great and I can't wait. This book is called The Black Prism. The second book is The Blinding Knife. The third book is The Broken Eye. And the fourth book is going to be The Blood Mirror. So that's going to be awesome. And I can't wait to get the rest of the books in the series. But this first book was really good. And I've heard really good things about the rest of the series. So I had to put it in this video even though I just read it. But I needed to include it. Alright everyone, like I said, those books are not every good fantasy book that is out there. Those are the ones that I've just read since I made that last video that I have really enjoyed and that have stuck with me and that I would recommend to anybody who wants to read fantasy out there or anybody who is a fantasy reader who wants to read something different. Leave a comment down below about a fantasy book that you would recommend to me because I am always looking for recommendations for good fantasy books because you can never have enough good fantasy. You hear me? Give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed it and comment down below. Until next time, goodbye!